Hi, I'm Tom from JFJ Wood Flooring. In this video, we're going to run through the 5 key factors I believe everyone should consider when buying a wood floor. Dimensions, wear layer, structure, finish, and grade. Now, for a lot of people, their wood flooring journey starts with an online search and quickly they're faced with hundreds of options, lots of technical terms and a huge range of prices. It can feel overwhelming trying to understand what you're actually looking at, let alone what you should be looking for. So the goal of this video is to break those 5 key areas down clearly, so by the end you'll not only have a better understanding of wood flooring in general, but you'll also be far more confident about what's right for your home, your lifestyle and your budget. Now, before we get started, I first want to say that I've worked in our family business for the past 14 years, and in that time I've met clients with a huge range of tastes and opinions when it comes to how their flooring should look. And that's exactly how it should be. You know, what one person loves, another might not, and neither is strictly right nor wrong. So throughout this video, when we're talking about the visual side of flooring, things like board widths and lengths, colour and grade, I'm not here to tell you what looks best. I may share some common trends and preferences that we see day to day, simply as guidance, but ultimately what matters most is what you like and what suits your project. So anything visual, a few quick pointers, anything practical, I'll try and explain in a bit more detail. Now, we're going to start by looking at the dimensions. And when we talk about dimensions, we're referring to 3 things: the width, the length, and the overall thickness of the floorboard. So starting with the width and the length. Now, of course, these are the dimensions you're going to see. So a few trends and visual pointers. Longer and wider boards have become very popular in recent years. They give the floor a more free-flowing look. They're generally considered a better fit for larger spaces, and they're quicker to install. They do cost more though, so that needs factoring into budget. In contrast, you can get random length floorboards where you get a mixture of lengths within each pack. Some say that random lengths gives a more traditional look. They're certainly cheaper to purchase as they allow for better yield from the timber during the manufacturing. My advice here would be to look at genuine photographs of installed floors, even if it's just random photos in magazines or social media. You know, take a mental note of the length profile and see what appeals to you most. And this may be obvious, but you will not be able to judge the length profile from free samples. This is something you ideally want to decide on first and request samples of boards that you know are the length profile you're happy with. It's also worth noting that if you do intend to span battens or joists with your engineered wood flooring, you will need to go for longer floorboards. And that leads me on to thickness. Now, of course, you're not going to see the thickness of the floor once it's installed. The choice as to which thickness to choose is going to be based on practical and budgetary considerations. The first thing to consider is whether you have any requirements on site which will determine a maximum or minimum thickness of flooring that you can choose. Factors such as subfloor conditions, underfloor heating requirements, existing floor heights, and internal doors. It's worth checking these on-site requirements very early on, as this could immediately narrow down your options and save you time. So moving on to wear layers. The wear layer is the terminology used to describe the thickness of the solid hardwood that's on the top surface of an engineered wood floor. It's called the wear layer as it's the hardwood layer which you'll be sanding and wearing through. Put simply, the thicker the wear layer, the more times the floor can potentially be sanded and refinished over its lifetime. Wear layers and board thicknesses run very much hand in hand. Thicker boards tend to have thicker wear layers and thinner boards, thinner wear layers. Now, board thickness and wear layers are important factors to consider, and because of this we've made a separate video which covers this topic in much more depth. So rather than dilute this video going into the finer details of board thicknesses and wear layer, we'll put a link to that video in the YouTube description below. The third key factor to consider is structure, and this is one of the most important yet most frequently overlooked aspects of engineered wood flooring. So when we talk about structure, we're referring to what the board is actually made up of, not just the top surface you look at, but what also lies beneath. The 2 most common types of structure are usually referred to as 3-ply and multi-laminate plywood, often shortened to multi-ply. A 3-ply engineered board is made up of 3 layers in total: a top hardwood wear layer, a middle layer, and a backing layer. While the name includes the word ply, it's worth understanding that this is not the same as a true plywood core. A 3-ply board can still perform fine in the right setting, but because there are only 3 layers working together, they generally don't offer the same level of stability as a true multi-laminate plywood construction. A multi-laminate plywood core, on the other hand, is made up of many thin layers of hardwood, bonded together in opposite directions to one another. This cross-layer construction is what gives the board its stability, far reducing the chances of expansion and contraction within the floor. The structure of the board can also have a big impact on how the floor feels and sounds underfoot. Floors built with a dense, multi-laminate hardwood core tend to feel much more solid and substantial to walk on, whereas lighter constructed boards can sometimes feel a little hollow by comparison. If you get samples of both, you'll feel this for yourself. 3-ply can feel lighter weight, whereas multi-ply more substantial. So, when you're comparing wood flooring, don't just consider what you can see on the surface. The internal construction of the board plays a huge role in stability, performance, and long-term reliability. Now, moving on to finish. So when we talk about finish, we're referring to the protective treatment that's applied to the surface of the wood. Whether that's the factory applied oil or lacquer, or a finish that's applied on site after installation. Your choice of finish is so important because it plays a huge role in how the flooring looks, and just as importantly, how resistant it is to stains and spills, how durable it is to everyday life, how easy it is to clean, how easy it is to maintain and patch repair. Finish is often where people focus mainly on aesthetics without considering these crucial practical considerations. A finish that looks perfect in a quiet bedroom may not be the best choice for a busy family kitchen or hallway, for example. Now, there are numerous finishes on the market, including lacquered, UV oiled, natural oil, hard wax oil, and unfinished boards that are treated on site. And each of these have their own set of pros and cons when it comes to durability, repairability, maintenance, and long-term performance. Rather than try and cover every detail here, we've created a separate in-depth video dedicated entirely to wood flooring finishes, where I'll go through each of these types in much more detail. Again, we'll be sure to include a link to that finishing video in the YouTube description below, and I would strongly recommend giving it a watch, especially if your flooring is going into a high-traffic room or an area in your home which could be more susceptible to spills and stains. In short, the right finish is just as important as the right board. It's what turns a beautiful piece of timber into a floor that's practical for your home and lifestyle. The fifth and final key factor to consider is the grade of the timber. Now, when we talk about grade in wood flooring, we're simply referring to the natural characteristics within the timber. Things like knots, colour variation, grain patterning, and natural imperfections. Grade is largely a visual choice, and again, I'm not going to try and tell you what looks best. It comes down to personal tastes and the style of the property you're working with. I will, however, run over some different grades and share some really important information when it comes to choosing a grade. So at one end of the scale, you'll typically find what's referred to as prime or AB grade. These are floors which contain far fewer knots and characteristics and achieve a more minimalist, cleaner look. These grades are often chosen for more contemporary interiors where a refined, consistent appearance is preferred. Next, we have select grade. This still offers a relatively clean appearance, but with a little bit more colour variation and characteristics than prime or AB. Then in the middle sits natural grade, which can also be referred to as classic grade or ABCD. I'll touch on the confusing terminology in a moment. Natural grade includes more knots and variation than prime or select, but without looking overly rustic. It's often described as a happy medium, and in our experience it tends to be the most versatile and popular choice across a wide range of homes. And then you have character and rustic grades. These celebrate the natural imperfections of the timber, larger knots, splits, and plenty of variation in character. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that grading terminology isn't governed by one universal standard, and different manufacturers and suppliers may use their own internal grading rules and even terminology. So grading can be confusing, and it's why we've also created a separate video on this topic. Again, link in the YouTube description below. For now though, here are some quick and useful tips. Firstly, look at genuine photos of the flooring. Not CGI or AI images, real photos of full floorboards, no matter how unprofessional these photos are. Genuine photos and accurate photos will demonstrate larger sections of the floor and allow you to get a much better idea on the amount of knots and characteristics to expect. A genuine picture of your potential floor in an unfurnished front room, for example, may be uninspiring, but it can be more valuable than an inaccurate CGI or AI image, no matter how attractive those images may be. If you look at a photo of wood flooring and you see the same knot more than once, it's not a genuine photo. Secondly, keep in mind that wood flooring is a natural product and no two floorboards or sample pieces will be identical to one another. Samples are simply not large enough to demonstrate the grade of the wood. Even the most rustic boards on the market will include 6-inch sections that have no character in whatsoever. Thirdly, the way knots are filled can have almost just as big of an impact than the amount of knots. Good quality engineered wood flooring will come with the knots pre-filled. It prevents them from being rough underfoot or collecting dirt and just makes the floor smoother and easier to live with. However, not all fillers look the same, so make sure you're happy with the look of the filler too. Finally, if you've looked at photos and had samples but still aren't completely sure, then on many of our products we can offer free delivery on just a single box, a trial box if you like. It allows you to see a larger section of the boards before committing to a full order. This can be arranged over the phone, so give us a call if this is of interest. So to wrap things up, there isn't one single best wood floor. The right choice comes from understanding how dimensions, wear layer, structure, finish and grade all work together, and then deciding what balance makes most sense for your home, your lifestyle and your budget. Hopefully this video has helped you cut through some of the noise, understand what you're actually looking at and feel more confident about what you should be looking for. As mentioned throughout this video, if you'd like to explore any of these areas in more detail, we've created separate videos that dive deeper into topics like finishes, wear layers and gradings, and you'll find those links in the YouTube description below. If you prefer to talk things through properly, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We're a family-run business and we're always happy to offer honest advice tailored to your project. Thanks for watching.